Imagine this. You wake up one morning and, as you glance into the mirror, you feel a wave of disbelief. The person staring back at you doesn't seem familiar. She's not the version you remember, the person who once laughed freely, who once held a sense of wonder in her eyes. Instead, there's something different. A bitterness in her expression. A resentment that you can almost feel vibrating in the room around her. You can't help but wonder, how did this happen? You thought you were better than the people you despised. You prided yourself on your compassion, your ability to forgive, your moral clarity. Yet here you are, feeling the very same anger, the same judgment that you once blamed others for harboring. You've become the very thing you vowed to fight. Resentment, like a subtle infection, has quietly taken root in your life. It began with a single seed, planted by someone else's actions, something that felt unjust, something that felt like betrayal, or failure, or cruelty. But over time, it grew. You watered it with every thought, every conversation about that person, every angry daydream of revenge. You didn't mean for it to become so consuming. Yet, now, it has. And, as it has grown, so have you. But not in the way you thought. You're no longer just a victim of what you once hated. You've become a product of it. Your resentment has shaped you, controlled you, and molded your destiny in ways you've never fully realized. Now, here's the paradox that's so hard to admit. In your hatred for someone or something, you have unknowingly given them the power to define your life. The very thing you resent has become the thing that controls you, more than you realize. The resentment that you feel for others isn't just a response to their actions, it is a reflection of your own inner conflict. And, as much as you might try to push it away, it continues to define you, to shape your thoughts, and to influence your choices. The most unsettling part? This is not just about a single person or a single event. It's about the system of thought that binds us all, how resentment, in all its forms, takes hold of the human spirit. Whether it's resentment toward a parent, a partner, a boss, a society, or even yourself, this destructive force is the silent puppeteer that pulls the strings of your life. It's like a shadow, always with you, but just out of sight. So, here's the great question. What if everything you've hated, everything you've resented, has actually shaped who you are? What if the very things you despise in others are the things you're unknowingly embodying? What if the path to your liberation, the key to freeing yourself from this cycle of hate and control, is buried beneath the resentment you carry? What if you are, in essence, what you hate? This question might feel jarring, but it's the question we must confront if we are ever to escape the grip of resentment. The truth is, we cannot move forward until we understand how this emotion has shaped us, and how, in many ways, it continues to define our lives, even when we're not aware of it. In the next part of this journey, we'll delve deeper into why this resentment takes hold in the first place, how it infiltrates our minds and lives, and why it's so difficult to break free from it. But for now, let the question linger. Let it echo in the back of your mind. Are you what you hate? Why does resentment take hold so effortlessly? Why, when you feel wronged or betrayed, does it seem so natural to hold on to that anger, that sense of injustice? Why does it have such a profound grip on your soul, even when you know, deep down, that it's harmful? The answer lies within the very core of human psychology and philosophy. Resentment is not simply a reaction to external events, it's a reflection of how we see ourselves, the world, and the people around us. It grows in the fertile ground of unmet expectations, unresolved emotions, and a sense of helplessness in the face of life's injustices. But to truly understand how resentment controls us, we must go deeper into the minds of the thinkers who have grappled with the complexities of human nature. Let's begin with Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist whose work on the unconscious mind sheds light on the hidden mechanisms that drive human behavior. Jung argued that we are all shaped by parts of ourselves that we don't fully understand or acknowledge, the shadow self. This shadow consists of the aspects of our personality that we reject or deny, often because they don't align with the version of ourselves we want to present to the world. These repressed qualities, Jung believed, have a profound influence on how we think and behave, even though we may not be conscious of them. Resentment is a perfect example of this process. When we feel wronged by someone, we are often confronting a part of ourselves that we have rejected. Perhaps it's a vulnerability we refuse to acknowledge, or an unhealed wound from our past. We project our anger onto others because it's easier to blame them than to confront the painful truth about ourselves. This projection keeps us trapped in a cycle of bitterness, preventing us from understanding the real root of our discomfort. Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher who explored the psychology of resentment in his work, might offer another layer of insight. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power suggests that human beings are driven by an innate desire to assert themselves, to dominate, and to impose their will on the world around them. Resentment, for Nietzsche, arises when we perceive ourselves as powerless, when we are unable to impose our will upon others, or when we feel rejected, oppressed, or weak. However, Nietzsche also introduced the idea of ressentiment, a French term he borrowed, which is the prolonged feeling of resentment that occurs when we feel we have been wronged, yet are unable to retaliate. Instead of expressing our anger directly, we internalize it, nurturing a deep sense of hatred that festers over time. This form of resentment is dangerous, Nietzsche argued, because it leads to self-loathing and weakness, while simultaneously fueling our desire for revenge or retribution. Jean-Paul Sartre, a key figure in existential philosophy, would agree that resentment is often linked to a deep sense of helplessness and a lack of personal freedom. In Sartre's view, the resentment we feel toward others is often rooted in the way we perceive the world as limiting our potential. He argues that individuals are condemned to live authentically and take responsibility for their own lives, yet many of us are trapped by the expectations and judgments of others. This creates a conflict between our desire for freedom and the weight of societal pressures, which can manifest as resentment. Sartre's existentialism points to the way in which resentment arises when we feel that others, or the world itself, restrict our ability to create meaning in our own lives. The resentment we harbor towards society or individuals is often a reflection of our own dissatisfaction with the choices we've made and the lives we feel forced to lead. But perhaps one of the most profound examinations of resentment comes from Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist who survived the horrors of Nazi concentration camps. Frankl's existential philosophy, known as logotherapy, centers on the search for meaning in life, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. Frankl believed that resentment is often the result of a failure to find purpose in suffering. When we view our pain as something senseless and unjust, we fall into the trap of resentment, unable to transcend the agony of our circumstances. Frankl's work underscores the importance of choosing how we respond to suffering. He famously said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response." Resentment occurs when we fail to recognize that space, that opportunity to choose how we react to life's injustices. When we remain trapped in a cycle of bitterness, we allow the world to dictate our emotional state, rather than asserting our own will and finding meaning in our suffering. This is where the crux of the problem lies. Resentment is a defense mechanism, a way to shield ourselves from the pain of vulnerability and powerlessness. But it also binds us to the very things we claim to hate. It keeps us locked in a cycle of self-victimization, where we are both the wrong party and the prisoner of our own emotions. In this sense, resentment is a form of self-sabotage. It is a way of avoiding the deeper truths about ourselves, truths we may not be ready to confront. And while it may feel empowering to blame others for our suffering, it ultimately keeps us trapped in a perpetual state of powerlessness. The question then becomes, why do we continue to hold on to resentment, even when it doesn't serve us? The answer may lie in the very nature of the human mind. Our brains are wired to dwell on negative experiences, to replay them over and over again, because it helps us make sense of the world and avoid future harm. But when we hold on to resentment, we are not simply remembering past hurts, we are actively shaping our future through the lens of that resentment. We become trapped in a narrative of victimhood, constantly looking for new reasons to justify our anger. This psychological pattern is reinforced by societal conditioning as well. In a world where division and polarization are rampant, resentment has become a powerful tool for social identity. We identify with groups, ideologies, or movements that reinforce our anger toward others, and in doing so, we create a collective narrative of us versus them. Resentment becomes not only personal but social, a way of belonging, of feeling righteous and justified in our hatred. In the end, resentment is not just a personal affliction, it is a cultural one. It's a product of our collective psychology, a force that transcends the individual and shapes the world around us. It is a reflection of how we are conditioned to perceive our own powerlessness and how, in our attempts to regain control, we inadvertently surrender it. But what if the key to breaking free from this cycle lies in recognizing that our resentment isn't just about others? What if it's about something deeper within us, something we can change? This question will guide us toward the next phase of our journey, uncovering the unseen consequences of resentment and how it silently shapes our lives. But first, let the weight of this revelation sit with you. Resentment is not just an emotion, it is a mirror. A reflection of everything you are unwilling to face within yourself. You've now begun to see resentment for what it truly is, not just an emotional response, but a deep-seated force that shapes your perceptions, your actions, and your very identity. But here's the thing, resentment doesn't just remain as a feeling or thought. It doesn't sit quietly in a corner of your mind, waiting to be acknowledged. No, it moves through you. It seeps into your life, silently influencing the choices you make, the people you associate with, and even the way you perceive the world around you. The most insidious part? These consequences are often invisible to us. Resentment operates beneath the surface of consciousness, like a slow-acting poison, gradually altering your reality without you even realizing it. And while the outward expression of resentment can be seen in our actions, our words, our body language, our decisions, the internal consequences are far more profound. The real damage lies in the way it warps your worldview and hijacks your potential. Let's start with your cognitive processes. The human brain is an intricate machine, constantly processing information and shaping our understanding of the world. When you harbor resentment, however, your brain becomes distorted, filtering the information you receive through the lens of that bitterness. This is known as cognitive bias, the tendency to process information in a way that aligns with our pre-existing beliefs and emotions. In the case of resentment, this means that every interaction, every event, and every piece of information is seen through the prism of anger, victimhood, and judgment. For example, when you meet someone new, you may subconsciously assess them based on whether or not they resemble the person or group you resent. If they do, you might feel an immediate sense of discomfort or distrust, even if they haven't done anything wrong. Your resentment has already begun to shape your perception of them, turning neutral or positive interactions into negative ones. This bias extends to the way you interpret events. Let's say something goes wrong at work. Without resentment, you might view the situation as a learning opportunity or a setback to overcome. But with resentment, you'll likely see it as an unjust attack on your character, a reflection of how you've been wronged. Every misstep, no matter how minor, becomes evidence that the world is out to get you. The neurological effects of resentment are equally damaging. Studies have shown that holding on to negative emotions like resentment can activate the brain's stress centers, particularly the amygdala, which is responsible for processing fear and anger. When the amygdala is activated, your body enters a state of fight or flight, even if there is no immediate threat. This prolonged state of stress can have devastating effects on your physical health, weakening your immune system, increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease, and even affecting your brain's ability to function properly. Moreover, resentment hijacks the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation. When you're consumed by resentment, your ability to think clearly and make rational choices diminishes. Instead of approaching situations with objectivity and logic, you act from a place of heightened emotion. You might lash out impulsively, sabotage relationships, or make decisions that are ultimately self-destructive, decisions that you'll regret later. But the impact of resentment goes beyond just your physical and mental well-being. It seeps into your relationships and the way you interact with others. When you hold on to resentment, it becomes impossible to truly connect with people. Whether it's a friend, a partner, a colleague, or a family member, your interactions are clouded by the resentment you harbor. You might withdraw emotionally, become defensive, or project your anger onto those who are closest to you. Consider, for instance, the effect resentment can have on a romantic relationship. If you feel wronged by your partner, whether through a betrayal, a perceived injustice, or a long-standing unresolved conflict, that resentment will inevitably affect how you communicate and interact. Instead of expressing your feelings openly and constructively, you might bottle them up, letting the resentment fester. Over time, this creates a wall between you and your partner, preventing real intimacy from developing. You might criticize them over minor things, build resentment for things they've done in the past, or emotionally withdraw, creating a cycle of negativity that becomes increasingly difficult to break. Even when you try to let go of resentment, it's not so simple. Your subconscious mind is still holding onto the past. Every new interaction or experience becomes colored by the same bitterness, as if you're unable to fully forgive and move forward. You might find yourself in a cycle of repeating the same mistakes, attracting the same toxic people, and reliving the same hurt, simply because resentment has clouded your judgment and kept you trapped in the past. This cycle of negativity extends to your societal and cultural worldview as well. When resentment is left unchecked, it spreads beyond the individual and becomes a collective force. Societies, cultures, and even entire nations become defined by the resentments they carry. This is not just about personal grudges, it's about the narratives we construct around injustice, victimhood, and power dynamics. Entire groups of people can become defined by their collective resentment, which leads to divisive thinking, polarized ideologies, and an unwillingness to move past old wounds. Take, for example, the way resentment can shape the politics of a society. In a divided world, where groups are pitted against one another, resentment becomes a tool of political manipulation. Leaders, whether knowingly or unknowingly, tap into the deep reservoirs of resentment within a population to rally support. They're the enemy, they say, and they're to blame for all your suffering. Resentment, like a fire, is stoked by such rhetoric, and it becomes a driving force behind social conflict, perpetuating cycles of hatred and violence. This social resentment feeds into the narrative of us versus them, where reconciliation becomes impossible because each side is defined by its grievances. The more resentment is cultivated, the harder it is for society to move forward in any meaningful way. Instead of working together to address real issues, groups become entrenched in their hatred, and the gap between them widens, feeding into the very cycles of injustice they claim to oppose. The most dangerous aspect of resentment, though, is how it limits your personal growth and potential. By clinging to the past, by refusing to forgive or let go, you hold yourself back from becoming the person you are capable of being. You can't evolve when you're stuck in a state of bitterness. You can't move forward when your energy is consumed by past hurts. And as much as you might think you're standing up for yourself, in reality, you're only keeping yourself in chains. Now, the question is, how long will you allow resentment to continue to shape your life in such profound ways? How much longer will you let it dictate your thoughts, your actions, your relationships, and your future? The consequences of resentment are far-reaching, and the time to confront them is now. But how do you break free from this cycle of negativity? The next section will explore how you can rebel against resentment, how you can choose a radically different path that leads to true freedom. The power to change is within your grasp, but first, you must understand the depth of the prison you've been living in. You've seen the damage. You've felt the weight of resentment as it has quietly shaped your thoughts, your relationships, your world. But now, it's time to confront the most important question: how do you break free? How do you escape the grip of this silent, yet powerful force that has controlled your destiny for so long? The answer, as paradoxical as it may seem, lies in acceptance. Not the kind of passive acceptance that comes from resignation or giving up, but the radical, transformative kind of acceptance that allows you to see things for what they truly are, and in doing so, enables you to break the chains of resentment once and for all. But how is this possible? How can you embrace the very thing you despise? How can you let go of the anger and frustration that has defined so much of your life? The first step in the rebellion is understanding that you cannot fight resentment with more resentment. You cannot conquer darkness by throwing more darkness at it. You cannot overcome the chains that bind you by simply tugging harder at them. Instead, you must shine a light on them. You must acknowledge the resentment in your life, look it in the eye, and confront it head on. This is where the wisdom of Viktor Frankl becomes invaluable. Frankl's experience in the concentration camps taught him that suffering is inevitable in life, but how we choose to respond to that suffering is entirely within our control. In the darkest of circumstances, he found a profound freedom in his ability to choose how he reacted to his tormentors. He could not control what was happening to him, but he could control how he responded. This is the key. You have the power to choose your response to life's injustices, big and small. Resentment grows when you allow it to dictate your reactions, when you let it control your perception of reality. The rebellion begins when you take that power back. You don't have to condone the actions that caused you pain, but you can choose to release the hold they have on you. You can choose not to let them shape your future. To do this, you must practice radical forgiveness. This is not about excusing wrongdoing or pretending that pain doesn't matter. It's not about minimizing the hurt you've experienced. Instead, radical forgiveness is about understanding that holding on to resentment only hurts you. It's about recognizing that, by continuing to harbor anger, you are giving others the power to control your emotional state, to control your happiness. Forgiveness, in this sense, is an act of self-liberation. It's not a gift to the person who wronged you, it's a gift to yourself. When you forgive, you free yourself from the prison of anger and hatred that has kept you trapped. You release the emotional energy that resentment consumes, and you reclaim the space within yourself for something much more powerful, peace. But this doesn't mean simply forgiving and forgetting. True forgiveness requires deep emotional work. It requires you to confront the pain head on, to feel it in its full intensity, and to let it pass through you. Forgiveness means allowing yourself to mourn the hurt, to process the anger, and then, at your own pace, to release it. It is a conscious choice, made every day, to no longer let resentment shape your story. This process is not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. But as you begin to practice forgiveness, something extraordinary happens. You start to see the world differently. The people who once triggered your anger no longer have the same power over you. You start to recognize the ways in which you've been holding yourself back, not just because of others, but because of the resentment you've been carrying within yourself. Forgiveness, however, is only one part of the equation. To break free from resentment, you must also shift your perspective. This is where the philosophy of Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche offers crucial insight. Jung argued that to truly integrate the shadow parts of ourselves, the repressed emotions, the uncomfortable truths, we must embrace them, not reject them. This means acknowledging that resentment is not something to be fought or denied, but something to be understood. Ask yourself, what is resentment trying to teach you? Why do you feel it so deeply? What does it reveal about your own vulnerabilities, your desires, your fears? Resentment is often rooted in a sense of injustice or betrayal, but it can also be a reflection of your unmet needs and desires. By exploring these underlying motivations, you begin to gain self-awareness and clarity. You move from being a passive victim of resentment to an active participant in your own emotional growth. This is the rebellious shift. Instead of reacting to resentment with more anger, you respond with curiosity. You ask yourself the tough questions. You look inward, not outward. This shift in perspective allows you to take responsibility for your emotions, to stop blaming others for how you feel, and to regain control over your destiny. Another powerful tool in this rebellion is mindfulness. Mindfulness teaches you to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment. When resentment arises, instead of letting it control you, you simply observe it. You recognize it for what it is, a fleeting emotion, not a permanent part of who you are. This practice allows you to step outside of your emotional reactions and make conscious decisions about how to respond. Mindfulness creates the space necessary for you to break free from the habitual patterns of resentment. It teaches you to respond to challenges with awareness, not impulse. It helps you recognize the power of your choices in shaping your reality. But radical forgiveness, self-reflection, and mindfulness are not just mental exercises, they require action. Action is the next crucial step in the rebellion. You must actively choose to create a life that is no longer defined by resentment. This might mean setting boundaries with people who trigger your anger, changing your social circle, or pursuing goals that align with your true desires, not your need for revenge or validation. Breaking free from resentment requires you to rewrite your story. You are no longer the victim of circumstances, you are the author of your own life. You create your narrative by choosing to let go of the past and move forward with intention, purpose, and clarity. Finally, to complete the rebellion, you must reconnect with your sense of purpose. Resentment often arises when we feel lost, powerless, or disconnected from what truly matters. By rediscovering your passion, your goals, and your values, you shift the focus away from the people or situations that caused you pain. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a creator, someone who has the power to shape their own future. The rebellion against resentment is not about denial, suppression, or pretending that everything is fine. It is about radical acceptance, forgiveness, self-awareness, and action. It's about choosing to rise above the bitterness and reclaim the power that resentment has stolen from you. And as you step into this new reality, you'll realize something profound. By breaking free from resentment, you've unlocked the true power to shape your destiny. You've come a long way in this journey, unraveling the complex threads of resentment and its hold on your life. You've confronted its power, understood its roots, and begun to rebel against its influence. But there's one final realization, one final truth that awaits you, a truth that will reshape everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world around you. It's this: you are not your resentments. You are not the sum of your past hurts, your failures, or the injustices that have been done to you. You are not the story you've told yourself about being a victim. You are not the anger you've clung to for so long, nor the bitterness that has shaped your identity. These things may have been a part of your life, but they are not who you are. This truth is the ultimate liberation, the kind of freedom that comes when you realize that your past does not define you. Your future is not chained to the people who wronged you, to the betrayals you've suffered, or to the expectations that society has imposed on you. The moment you release resentment is the moment you reclaim your power. The moment you forgive, you free yourself from the prison of your own mind. This is the profound insight that philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre touched upon. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, the overman, is a vision of human potential that goes beyond conventional morality, beyond the limitations imposed by resentment, and toward the creation of one's own values. Nietzsche believed that in order to live fully, we must transcend the reactive state of resentment and become creators of our own destiny, free from the shackles of societal expectations and grudges. Sartre, in his existential philosophy, emphasized the concept of radical freedom. He believed that while we are often constrained by the conditions of our existence, we always have the power to choose our response to them. This is the ultimate freedom, the ability to choose who we want to be, regardless of what has been done to us. This freedom is not the absence of suffering, but the ability to find meaning in it and to transcend its limiting effects. You see, resentment is the antithesis of freedom. It keeps you bound to the past, to the stories you've told yourself about who you are and what you've endured. But when you release it, you open yourself to the possibility of a new story, one that is not defined by pain or injustice, but by your ability to rise above them. You stop being a passive observer of your life and become an active participant in creating the future you desire. This ultimate truth is beautifully illustrated by the life of Viktor Frankl. After enduring the unspeakable horrors of a concentration camp, Frankl chose to transcend his suffering. He didn't deny it, but he chose to find meaning in it, to make sense of it, and to move beyond it. Frankl's life is a testament to the power of the human spirit to choose freedom, even in the face of extreme adversity. And it is this power that you possess as well. The truth is, the greatest power you have is your ability to choose how you respond to life's challenges. And when you choose to let go of resentment, you choose freedom. You choose to see the world through a lens of possibility, not limitation. You choose to step into your full potential as a creator of your own reality. As you stand at the threshold of this new reality, you begin to realize something profound. The greatest revenge you can take on the world that has wronged you is to live a life free from the weight of resentment. The more you release the anger, the hurt, and the judgment, the more you reclaim the life that is rightfully yours. In a world that constantly tries to tell you who you should be, who you should hate, and what you should believe, the ultimate truth is this: you get to choose. You are not bound by the narratives of victimhood, resentment, or hatred. You are free to rewrite your story, to define your own values, and to live authentically. And when you do, when you fully embrace this freedom, you'll begin to see the world with new eyes. You'll no longer be trapped by the anger of the past. Instead, you'll see others not as enemies or obstacles, but as fellow travelers on this journey of life. You'll see that everyone is fighting their own battles, carrying their own burdens, and that the power to heal lies not in retaliation, but in understanding, in forgiveness, and in the willingness to let go. This, then, is the ultimate truth: you are the creator of your own destiny. Resentment has no power over you unless you allow it. The past does not control you unless you continue to relive it. And the future is yours to shape, not defined by the wounds of yesterday, but by the choices you make today. So, as you move forward from this moment, let go of resentment. Let it slip away, like a heavy coat you no longer need. Step into the light of freedom, knowing that you are no longer bound by the bitterness of the past. You are free to create, to love, to forgive, and to live fully. This is your truth. This is your freedom. This is your life. And it is all within your grasp. End with this thought. Imagine, then, waking up one day and realizing that the person you see in the mirror is no longer defined by resentment, anger, or bitterness. She is free to be who she was always meant to be. And that, in itself, is the ultimate act of rebellion.